Hi, it's Anna from Post Me Book. It's been a while since so it always seems to be a while since I let out a clip, but now it's really been a few months. Took a little bit of a hiatus, but now I'm back, and bold enough to say I haven't actually read those many books. And although my last post was probably showing how many books I was gonna read, hardly read any, if at all any, except the one book, and that's There by Tommy Orange. And this one I actually read in the last week or 2 weeks, so even then I haven't actually read that much at all. I was a bit busy, as life gets sometimes. And so this is the only book I'm going to review. And then hopefully I'm going to get back into it and start reviewing other books, because I've kind of missed this, and it did help me achieve my goals, which is actually to read a bit more. So that's a nice thing. So I want to really keep it up. Anyway, There by Tommy Orange. I think I read this book because of the evening reader. Can't quite remember her name. But the book itself is, it's an interesting book. It took a little bit of time for me to get into, just because there's so many characters and I kept forgetting who's who. So it takes up, I think it's about 12 characters, and it takes up the different parts of their lives within the book, but they all intertwine in the end. So there is the relevance, so stick with it. It's Tommy Orange is a Native American person. He's writing about Native Americans. The book begins with a little bit of history of certain things that happened, which I have to admit I actually didn't know. And I was one of those who watched cowboy movies, and of course the cowboy movies in those days were always about the side of the Americans and what they did. There were the odd films that actually were on the side of the Native Americans, but not always. So this was an eye-opener, so it's definitely worth reading. It takes up stories of different people in Oakland, different Native Americans in Oakland who are trying to find their identity as Native Americans, and some of them not quite finding it so easy to live into this image of being a Native American, rather see themselves as they are now. And some of them not quite understanding, well, why am I struggling to be a person I'm not? I think the aim of this book by Tommy Orange is also trying to show the importance of what your heritage is, because even if you don't embrace everything, heritage plays a big part. Plays a part. Let me not say a big part. It all depends on the individual. Some of us take it in the moment that we are and live forwards, rather than always trying to connect lives to what has been. However, there is truth in saying that history is important. We cannot ignore history, because that's how mistakes continue, as we've seen in this world. Ignoring history and what it means to people, even if it's not directly connected to you, you sort of miss the meaning of why things happen, important things happen. So I think Tommy Orange is also trying to bring this across. Anyway, another day went by, hence the changing clothes. It's taken a little bit longer to actually make this clip, just because things happen. Had to cook, had to sleep, had to get up, had to work, but now I'm back. So I continue with the book There by Tommy Orange, and as I finished off, well, I can't quite remember how I finished off, but I will work it out. The book tells stories, or the life stories of different people, and they all sort of interconnect somewhere along the line, and they're trying to find their identity. So the book really is about people trying to find their identity, or trying to fit into where they are in their time of life. And they're at different points in their time of life. Opal Viola, that's her name. She's struggling with addiction. She's struggling with alcohol addiction, which she's combating, and she's one of a lady who's trying to get connected with her Native American roots. Then there's Edwin Black, who's a filmmaker, and he's gathering stories about Native Americans living in Oakland, California, and how they perceive their lives, if they can remember things that made a big difference in their lives. And he goes around paying people so that they can tell their stories. The book also talks about Thomas Frank, who was raised by his grandmother, and he's struggling to find himself. It talks about the complexities of cultural assimilation, because I guess when you're and the loss of tradition, there also takes into account the importance of community. Well, in this instance, the importance of their community, because they are people who are trying to hold together and try and remember the traditions and to help generations or others come back to their traditions through powwows. And now I get an idea of what powwows are, just because I've also seen a documentary about a Native American girl who wanted to go and do a powwow and what it meant to her when she did. Can't quite remember the name of the documentary, but anyway, that's another story, nothing to do with the book itself. So moving on. So it's all this coming together. It's people with addictions, people with drug problems, people stealing, which can be in any community, but I think Tomi Orange is trying to highlight that some of the things that have been taken away, the identity, the roots, the traditions, lead up to these negative situations, which we sometimes see in other communities also. So this is not necessarily new, and it's not necessarily just within Native Americans, but it's the history. One can see that the history leads to the outcome. I think the book itself, it's a reminder of the importance of who you are and how you actually use it. You don't always have to embrace it. In some cases, knowing who you are, knowing where you come from, can help to bind you, to hold you together, or it can help you understand yourself, or it can help you move on from wherever you are, from situations that are a big negative because you don't quite understand, why is this happening, why am I being pulled from back and forth, why are they saying I should be this, that and the other, so that it can perhaps help you accept yourself. And I think this is what Tomi Orange is also trying to bring out in his book. And it's also the resilience of the community, that is the resilience of the community that these people live in. As I said, Edwin Black, and then the powwows, people finding themselves through the powwows, finding an identity in the community, brings them together. So I'd have to say, this book, right? I'll just bring this book, I still have it, so I must return it to the library. It is an interesting book. It's not excessively long, but it looks shorter than it actually is, because it actually took me longer than I thought it would take me. And as I said, I was confused because there are so many characters in this book telling their different stories. However, the good thing about this is that the chapter titles are the names of the characters. So when I get confused about one character coming up later in the book, I then go back to read the chapter to find out who exactly they are. So that really helped. So my takeaway for this book, it is interesting, it is thought-provoking. It does give you thought about Native Americans and their experiences. So it's a good start. However, for me, I did find it a bit, I think I've said this many times, found it a bit confusing. That should not put you off, because as I said, it's also easy enough to find out who the characters are by rereading the old chapters. So, good book. I also actually did borrow his next book, which seems to be a continuation of There There. There There, if I didn't say, these people's, I did say this, these people's stories, they interconnect at some point, at some point in the book. And not to give too much away, that connection, it makes it an interesting book because of that connection. Actually, it makes you think, aha, so that's why they this, that and the other. So that was also good thing about the book. Not a new book, and I'm sure there are many reviews out there. I haven't read any, but as I said, I read this one because of, I'm just dropping books on the floor, because of the evening reader, and I think she's called Priscilla. I can't quite remember. I'll write it down somewhere. But yeah, that's the take on that one. And this is his next, well, the follow-up book called Wandering Stars. However, I actually do not have time to read this book because I borrowed these books at the same time and run out of time. Got to lend it back to return it to a library. I can borrow it again. But having said that, I probably would have a break anyway before reading this book anyway. For me, this book isn't one where I'd jump into the next book straight away. But I rarely have that feeling anyway. It's very rare that I find a book and then a follow-up that I want to read straight away. So nothing to say about this book that I don't want to read it now. I'll take a break. I've got other books to read that I also have to return to the library. So this one, someone else wants to read it. No time to do it now. But I will read it. And I was wrong. I have actually read other books. I read The Deep by Rivers Solomon. I actually started off listening to the audiobook of this one. And I thought, no, I actually want to read this book. So I managed to borrow it also. This one's not a very long book. And it seems to be written by some other people, David Diggs, William Hudson, and Jonathan Snipes. I'm not 100% sure how it all becomes Rivers Solomon with these guys. I'll have to read that up. And perhaps when I come back next time, I'll let you know just how the writers are connected. But anyway, so I read this book by Rivers Solomon. I was well into it in the beginning. It's about, as you can see, a mermaid. This is a story about mermaids. It's an interesting book, actually. It starts off very well, very interesting. And this mermaid who is called, I forget, it was such a while back. Let me just pause this and try and remember. Let's see, actually, I'll just look in the book. She is called Itu. And Itu is, she carries the weight of her community because there are not very many people of this type of mermaid living deep down in the sea. As far as they know, they're probably the only ones. And she carries the weight of their history. So she knows all their history while all the other mermen, I forget what they're actually called, forget their history. So it's only one of them who's given this gift or burden, as she feels it is, to carry the weight of the history. And at some point, after many years, she shares this history with the people on one particular day. And then when they've shared it for that particular day, she has to take it back so that they don't have to carry the burden of knowing the burden of their history. Their history has been both positive and not positive. So for her, she finds it a weight that she would absolutely not have. And she actually decides to not take it back on that particular day when she finally has to share the history. She decides not to take it back from all the people, all the other mermen. I have to check out what they're called. Wait a minute. All right, I'll have to I'll have to link that. This is taking way too long. But anyway, whatever they're called, she decides to not take back the history on the day is called the Remembrance. And the trouble is, if she doesn't take back the history from these people, from her people, we'll call them people, just because I can't quite find out what they're called, they're stuck in this state of frenzy kind of thing where they're appreciating, feeling some joy, not feeling some joy, because as I said, their history is both positive and not so positive. But anyway, she's willing to do this just because she feels everybody else just goes around not knowing what a burden it really is to carry the weight of their history. And then having given them their history, she then decides to swim away because she realizes at some point they'll probably escape from this state of mind and try and find her and give her back the memories which she doesn't want. She feels that she's losing herself. She feels that she's being drawn into the history and she can't identify which part of me is real, which part is a history. So she swims away as far as possible, as fast as possible, trying to get away from the people, as make as much a distance between her and the people before they come out of this state and come searching for her. So the book itself, is also about finding identity, and as like her other book, this one also has a connection between slavery. So the underwater community, Yetu's community, they have a kind of connection with African slaves that were thrown overboard. So that is there. But going back to Yetu, when she leaves her community, she goes searching for herself. So the book, again, as I said, is about identity. It's about searching for yourself. So she finds her own individuality from being further and further away from her group, which she has never experienced. Albeit this remembrance, or the weight of the remembrance, is supposed to be a blessing or a gift, and that she's chosen. It's not something that she wants. But during her journeying away from her community, she happens to end up on land, and she finds human beings the human beings find her, or both, which make her question herself and what exactly she's looking for. Also means that she starts questioning, should she leave her people as they are, or should she continue carrying the history, or she understands, or she begins to appreciate, perhaps is the way to say it, appreciate the importance of history. So it's another book where importance of history is taken up. These books, There, There, and The Deep, they had nothing to do with each other. This one I just chose just because I'd read another Rivers Solomon book and I completely enjoyed it. This one, I must say that, albeit I found it very interesting in the beginning, and I still find it interesting, somewhere along the line I sort of lost interest. I don't really know why, and I'm not even 100% sure I actually reached the end of this book. I think it was too much. No, I don't actually know why. So I'll have to go back and look in this book and see whether I actually finished it. I think I'll give it another try and finish it, because it is a good book, and I do understand. I feel like I get the message because I was well into it. I'm not quite sure why I lost interest, but as I said, I'll check it out again. It's not a very long book at all, so really, even the print is not that small, so really I don't actually know why I didn't finish it. I will try and finish it just because. Just because it's not a long book, and really I can finish it, and really the beginning was good. Let's see if there was anything else I need to say about this. No, I think on the whole I would still say worth reading, because I did start reading it and I truly enjoyed the beginning. I'll get back to you as to whether I finish it or not. So that was that one. I have read another book. I read quite a few books, actually. Well, quite a few. I've been gone a while, so not quite a few. I read The Crossing Places by Ellie Griffith. I'd started reading this one just by chance, because I think there was the whole series, or there's a series. Let me get the words right. There's a whole series. This is a book in a collection, and the whole series was there in my library. So I just figured, well, let me start one. At least I know I can continue the others. And then I saw that there was another booktuber who actually mentioned this book. I forget her name. I'll probably link it down. She hadn't read it, but she was just wondering if anyone else had read it, and I figured, well, okay, someone else is reading it, let me start reading it. These books are also not very new. Let's see, she came out with this one in 2009, and it's about an archaeologist called, can't remember names anymore, Ruth. And it's about her finding a child's bones, as I say at the back. Child's bones are discovered near the site of the prehistoric henge on the South Norfolk coast. Yes, based in England. And the police ask local forensic archaeologist Dr. Ruth Galloway to date them. These are the remains of a local girl who disappeared 10 years ago. DCI Harry Nelson refuses to give up the hunt for this missing girl. So this book is about Ruth, who's the forensic archaeologist, Nelson, who's the policeman, and the unraveling of the story about these remains. Good book, easy to read. It's a bit like, what should I say? It's very much, if you've seen these TV series, police TV series, the British ones, like, I suppose Vera. Yeah, I guess like Vera. It's a bit like that. So this could definitely be made into a TV series. It sort of unfolds bit by bit by bit, and it interconnects these people, especially Ruth and Nelson, the policeman, who hadn't met before. And then towards the end, you get to know who done it. I think I did not guess who done it. However, would I call this gripping? I'll call it entertaining. I'm not sure I'd call this a gripping story. I've read P.D. Conwell a long time back, and I felt her books were more gripping. That might have changed since then. This one is more like I could read it because it's an easy read, and I can comfortably read several pages and then put it down and then pick it up again. So, yes, slow drama, I guess, is what I'll call it. But worth reading, this one. I've got another one of hers that I'm reading, the Janus Stone, which is the next one in line. And I'll let you know how that one goes. But not a bad book. This was an in-between book. It's called Companions on the Road by Tanith Lee. It seems I bought this one in 1992. Not a new book either. She wrote this book. Copyright is first published in 1975. Not even sure why I bought this book. Perhaps just because it was cheap. It was £1.99. And perhaps I just figured, well, I'll read something different, because I don't think I was necessarily into any kind of reading when I look at this book. I think I just picked it up just because. But having said that, I like her style. Tanith Lee died. I looked this up just to know who Tanith Lee is. She died, but she was a writer back in the days. She tended to write fantasy with a bit of frightening, and this one is about, as you can see, these scarly people, dead people, following this person. So the story is about three people. It's about Havo, who is the main character, and he's traveling with Felnac, Feluce, and Kalich, I think he's called. Just check this out. Kachil. And Havo and Felucia are soldiers, and this is many years ago. I'm not quite sure. It's set in a town called Avilis, but judging by the language used, it's supposed to be years back, long before. Let's see, long before. When would this be? Oh, I can't even think. When they were using tallows for candles, Vikings, past Vikings time, something like that. No, not as far back as Vikings. Okay, sometime back anyway. And it's about these three men, Falus, Kachil, and Havo, who's the main character. And the three of them, there's a war, and Falus and Havo are the soldiers who have been sent to burn down the castle of the king of Avilis, which is what happens. However, the king and his son and his daughter never come out, so they supposedly they don't surrender, so they were supposedly burnt with the castle. So afterwards, Havo and his other two companions, they steal a chalice from the castle, and they plan on dividing the spoils afterwards when they manage to get money out of it. Havo's main goal is to get the money and give it to a young guy who died in the war, one of his soldiers who died in the war, to give it to his family, while the other two, well, they just want the money. So when they escape with this chalice, they start being followed by these three horsemen, and the story's about what happens. Slowly by slowly, the horsemen catch up with each one and the other, and, well, nothing good comes out of it. But it's a very short book, and it does have a good ending. And not to give anything else away, I'm not sure you might read it, you might find it. I found this book actually good. I love the way she describes that bit. I guess I link a bit to Ursula Le Guin, that she's very descriptive, and I get a good picture of what she's trying to say. So in that sense, I would say that I found this a page turner. Oddly enough, I actually enjoyed this book, and it's a novella, so it's very short. It's 122 pages, and it's that old that it still has these backsides where you could order your next book. They give you ideas, and you just print this and you send it off by an order. I don't think anyone does that anymore, but anyway, always found this fun, just to go through these pages and see what possible books I could order. The Beaver bestsellers. Anyway, now I digress. It was a good book, so yeah, check it out. So that is Tanith Lee's Companions on the Road. I might end up reading another one of hers, but those were the 4 books that I've read this time round. Let's see if I can throw up the other books that I'm still reading. I haven't quite finished this one, but I'm getting on with it, which is, turn it right way up, Amin, The Tragedy of Uganda. Still good, still easy to read, but haven't quite finished it. This one I started, The Good Wife of Bath. Thankfully, they haven't asked for it back, so perhaps I'll finish it. It's actually a good read. It's not a short book, albeit the print is nice and easy, and I like the pages. And the story's interesting. Perhaps I'll tell that one bit by bit, just so that I can give an update. Or we'll see. Perhaps I'll finish it and then talk about it. And I did, of course. Well, not of course. I don't know whether I said it before, but I borrowed a book by Anne Rice. I couldn't quite find the interview of the vampire. But that's all right. It's perhaps better that I use my time to read something new. So I borrowed The Wolf Gift by Anne Rice. So that's on my list as well. And I think I'll stick to those 3 books. I'm not sure I have any others. I do actually. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. So that one I've also got to read before they ask for it back. Best get on with it. I'm going to read The Proud Tower. This one is a historical novel. A portrait of the world before the war, 1840 to 1940. And this one, my husband thinks it's an excellent book. He's very into Barbara Tuchman. And there was another booktuber, now I'll have to put his name down on the list, who also thinks this is a very good book, or that she's also a very good writer. This one's from our home library, so that's good. Don't have to lend it, or return it. So I can read this in my own good time. However, that I think is quite enough books. So, until next time, bye-bye.